are places where the past refuses to stay buried, where ancient paths cross modern installations, and the dead walk routes they've traveled for centuries. The Hawaiian Islands, a strategic jewel in America's Pacific defense, are such a place. Lush mountains, crystal waters, and something else. Something that moves through the darkness in perfect military formation, carrying torches that cast no heat and beating drums that echo from another time. For over 80 years, American service members stationed in Hawaii have filed reports that military brass would prefer to forget. Reports of impossible processions, of figures in ancient war regalia marching through restricted areas at night, of electromagnetic equipment failing when these formations pass, of overwhelming dread that grips even the most hardened combat veterans. The indigenous Hawaiian people have a name for this phenomenon, Huaka'i Pō, the Night Marchers. According to tradition stretching back over 1,000 years, these are the spirits of ancient warriors, chiefs and their retinues, continuing their sacred duties long after death. They follow specific routes between temples, battlegrounds, and burial sites. They march to the sound of drums and conch shells, and Hawaiian wisdom is clear. If you encounter them, lie face down. Do not look, do not speak, because to meet their gaze is to join their eternal patrol. Most military personnel dismissed these warnings as superstition until they stood watch alone on a moonless night and heard the drums approaching, until they saw torchlights moving through terrain where no one should be, until their radios filled with static and their blood ran cold with primal recognition. They had stumbled into something that predates their presence here by a millennium. What follows are documented accounts from U.S. Navy personnel who encountered the Night Marchers. These are not campfire stories. These are incident reports, letters home, official testimonies, and interviews with men and women trained to observe and report accurately under pressure. Each witness risked ridicule by coming forward. Each maintains their account was real, and each still struggles to reconcile what they experienced with what they thought possible. If you're drawn to these true accounts from the fog of war, stories where the unexplained intersects with military service, consider subscribing. There are more accounts waiting to be told, accounts that might change how you see the world. Now, let's step into December 1944, where a young sailor from San Francisco learned that some guard posts are more dangerous than others. December 1944. 3 years after the attack that pulled America into global war, Pearl Harbor Naval Station remained a hive of controlled chaos. Ships moved in and out constantly, sailors worked around the clock, and security remained paramount. Japanese submarines still prowled the Pacific, and the possibility of sabotage kept everyone alert. Seaman First Class Robert Chen, 22 years old, had joined the Navy in 1943. Born and raised in San Francisco's Chinatown, he'd grown up American, proud to serve despite the prejudice Chinese immigrants still faced. He'd proven himself reliable, earning assignment to base security, a position requiring clearance and trust. On the night of December 14th, he drew the graveyard watch, 2,200 to 600 hours, patrolling the eastern perimeter fence. The location was significant, though Chen didn't know it yet. The Hawaiians called this area Pu'uloa, the ancient name for Pearl Harbor, translating roughly to Long Hill or Hill of Sacrifice. It was ground soaked in history, a place where Hawaiian chiefs had once been received with ceremony, where human sacrifices had been offered to the gods, where warriors had trained and dead had been honored. When the U.S. Navy dredged the harbor and built the base starting in 1908, they disturbed countless unmarked graves and sacred sites. Hawaiian cultural advisors had warned that desecrating such ground would anger the spirits. Those warnings went unheeded. Chen knew none of this as he began his patrol. His orders were straightforward. Walk the fence line, report anything unusual. Maintain radio contact every 30 minutes. Standard duty. Boring, usually. A chance to think about home, about when the war might end, about the girl he'd left behind. But that night was different. Years later, in a letter to his mother dated December 18, 1944, a letter now archived at the National Japanese American Historical Society, Chen described what happened. The letter's tone shifts from the casual reassurances of a son to his worried mother into something darker, something that still trembled with fear 4 days after the event. "Mom, I know you worry about the Japs attacking again, but that's not what's keeping me up at night. Last Thursday, I had the graveyard watch, 2200 to 0600 hours. Around 0230, I was maybe 200 yards from the old Hawaiian burial sites they told us not to mess with during orientation. The air changed first. It got heavy, thick, like before a storm, but the sky was clear. Then I heard it. Drums. Not our drums. Something deeper, older, a rhythm that made my chest tight. I clicked on my flashlight and saw nothing, but the sound got louder. Then came the chanting. Men's voices, dozens of them, singing in a language I didn't know. And Mom, I saw lights. Not flashlights. Torches, moving in a line along the trail outside the fence. I counted maybe 30, 40 lights, all in perfect formation, all moving toward the water. I grabbed my radio, but it was dead. Just static. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my flashlight. When I picked it up and looked again, the lights were closer, maybe 50 yards away now. I could see shadows behind them, tall figures carrying spears and wearing what looked like war cloaks. They didn't walk like modern men. They moved like they owned the night, like the earth itself was making way for them. Protocols said to challenge unidentified personnel. I raised my rifle and shouted, "Halt! Identify yourself!" My voice came out weak. The procession didn't stop, didn't even slow down. The lead figure, I swear he was 7 feet tall, turned his head toward me. I couldn't see his face, just darkness under a helmet made of feathers and teeth. I don't remember deciding to run. I just remember sprinting back to the guard station, my lungs burning, convinced something was behind me. When I got there, Corporal Diaz asked why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I couldn't answer. Chen filed an incident report the following morning. His hands were still shaking when he wrote it. The report made its way to Lieutenant James Kauina, the duty officer, himself a native Hawaiian from a family with deep roots in Oahu. Kauina read Chen's account, then did something unusual. He pulled Chen aside for a private conversation away from the other enlisted men. According to Chen's later testimony to a Hawaiian history project in 1992, Kauina's face had gone pale. The lieutenant told him, quietly, that he'd violated kapu, a sacred prohibition in Hawaiian culture. By standing in the path of the Night Marchers, by challenging them, by looking directly at them, Chen had invited disaster. Kauina instructed him to visit a kahuna, a Hawaiian priest, for a cleansing ritual. He gave Chen the name and address. He also told him, in no uncertain terms, never to discuss the incident with other sailors. "The Navy doesn't want to hear about Hawaiian ghosts," Kauina had said. "And you don't want a reputation as the guy who sees things that aren't there. Go see the kahuna, pay whatever he asks, and forget this happened." The official Navy report, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request in 1998, tells a different story. It lists the incident as possible auditory hallucination due to sleep deprivation and stress. No security breach detected. Recommend reassignment to daytime duties. Clinical. Dismissive. An easy explanation that required no uncomfortable questions. But the base security logs from that night tell a third story. They show that Chen's radio did indeed fail between 0227 and 0304 hours, exactly matching his account of when the drums began and when he fled back to the guard station. Equipment failure happens, of course, but 2 other entries in the logs are harder to explain. At 0233 hours, a sailor on the opposite end of the base reported hearing distant drums, origin unknown. At 0041 hours, another guard at a different checkpoint logged unusual sounds resembling native chanting. Neither man knew Chen. Neither had heard about his encounter when they filed their reports. Yet all three heard the same phenomena within minutes of each other. Chen never returned to night watch. He completed his service without further incident and shipped home to San Francisco in 1946. He married, raised 3 children, ran a successful import business. He seemed to put the war behind him. But in 1992, when a Hawaiian cultural preservation project was collecting oral histories, Chen agreed to an interview. He was 70 years old by then. His voice on the recording is steady, matter of fact. But when he reaches the part about the lead figure turning to look at him, there's a pause, a long silence. Then, I've seen combat. I was at Leyte Gulf. I've been shot at. I've watched friends die, but nothing in the war scared me like those torches. Because I knew in my bones, that what I saw wasn't supposed to be seen by someone like me. It wasn't meant for the living, and when that figure turned and looked at me, I felt marked, like I'd been noticed by something that could reach across from wherever it existed and pull me in. Chen's story might have remained just another unexplained incident in Pearl Harbor's long history, except for what happened 17 years later. In 1961, during construction of a new storage facility on the eastern perimeter of the base, work crews uncovered something that made the project supervisor immediately halt construction and call base command. They'd found a mass burial site. Over 200 skeletal remains arranged in perfect military formation. Ancient Hawaiian warriors buried with their weapons, spears still clutched in bony hands. The skeletons were oriented toward the harbor entrance, positioned as if guarding the approach even in death. The location of this burial site? The exact spot where Robert Chen had stood watch in December 1944. The exact trail where he'd seen the torches moving. The Navy brought in archaeologists. They documented everything, took measurements, photographed the remains. Then, quietly, they relocated the bones to a different location. Construction continued. The incident was never publicized. The storage facility was completed on schedule. And if any of the workers who disturbed that site ever reported strange experiences afterward, those reports have not survived in the official record. Were Chen's drums and torches a hallucination brought on by stress and isolation? A trick of exhausted senses in the small hours of the night? Or had he witnessed something that Hawaiian tradition has insisted is real for over 1,000 years? The spirits of ancient warriors continuing their eternal patrol, following the same path they walked in life, indifferent to the modern world that is built over their sacred ground. And if the Night Marchers are merely folklore, why do they appear at the same locations, follow the same routes, manifest the same way, generation after generation? The official condemnation order for Building 178 at Naval Station Pearl Harbor was dated April 2003. The stated reasons: extensive asbestos contamination, structural instability, and the high cost of renovation versus demolition. Standard bureaucratic language for a structure that had outlived its usefulness. The building was razed that summer. Most sailors on base barely noticed. It was just another World War II-era barracks being replaced by newer facilities. But Building 178's real story, the reason it was condemned, began with a phone call to Base Chaplain Commander Sarah Yoshida in early February 2003. A sailor wanted to talk, needed to talk, and preferred to do it off the record. Yoshida, who'd served as a Navy chaplain for 15 years, had heard plenty of confessions and counseling requests. This one sounded different. The sailor's voice carried an edge she recognized. Genuine fear. Not anxiety about deployment or relationship problems. Fear of something immediate and inexplicable. She agreed to meet privately. That first conversation led to 2 more. Then a 4th sailor came forward. then a fifth. By mid-February, Yoshida had interviewed 5 different enlisted personnel who'd been housed in Building 178 over the previous 6 weeks. None knew the others had spoken to her, yet their accounts aligned in disturbing ways. Yoshida did something that violated Navy policy. She compiled a confidential report documenting everything. She never submitted it officially. Doing so would have derailed her career and accomplished nothing. But she kept it, dated it, and years later, after retiring, she shared it with a researcher investigating military encounters with paranormal phenomena. That report tells the story backwards, starting with the aftermath and working back to the first incident. It's a structure that mirrors how Yoshida herself pieced together what happened, interview by interview, each one revealing another layer of something that command desperately wanted to ignore. The final incident occurred on February 11th. Shore Patrol found Petty Officer 2nd Class Marcus Webb at 400 hours, walking barefoot down Kamehameha Highway 3 miles from base. He was wearing his PT uniform, drenched in sweat despite the cool night air, and unresponsive to questions. They brought him back to base medical. Physical examination found no drugs, no alcohol, no signs of physical trauma, but Webb was in shock, his pupils dilated, his breathing rapid, his hands trembling. 2 days later, after he'd stabilized enough to speak coherently, Chaplain Yoshida interviewed him. Webb was reluctant at first, convinced he'd sound insane. But Yoshida assured him she'd heard stranger things. A chaplain's lie meant to comfort. She hadn't. What Webb described was unlike anything in her experience. "I woke up because the room was freezing," Webb told her. "Not cold, freezing. I could see my breath in the air like white clouds. It was February, Hawaii. That doesn't happen." Thompson and Ruiz were still asleep in their racks. I sat up, trying to figure out if the AC was broken, and that's when I heard them. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy boots. Lots of them. Marching in rhythm. Perfect rhythm. Webb said his first thought was some kind of training exercise, maybe a surprise inspection, but it was 0200 on a Tuesday morning. Nobody ran drills at that hour. He listened as the footsteps approached his door, then stopped. Complete silence. He waited for someone to knock or burst in. Nothing happened. Just silence and breathing. He could hear breathing on the other side of the door, heavy, labored breathing from what sounded like multiple people. "I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door," Webb said. The hallway was empty. Completely empty, but ma'am, the footsteps started again immediately, and they were inside the room now, with us. I heard boots walking across our floor, invisible boots. Thompson woke up screaming. He heard them too. The temperature dropped even further. Frost was forming on the window. Webb described looking at that window and seeing something impossible. Reflections. Dozens of men reflected in the glass, carrying torches, wearing what looked like ancient war gear. He could see them clearly in the reflection, tall figures in formation, moving through the room. But when he spun around, there was nothing there. Just him, Thompson sitting up in his rack with his eyes wide, and Ruiz still somehow asleep. "I didn't think," Webb said. "I just ran. Out the door, down the hallway, out of the building. I ran until I couldn't run anymore. The Shore Patrol found me on the highway. I don't even remember how I got there." Webb requested an emergency transfer the next day. It was granted with unusual speed. The incident before Webb's occurred 2 days earlier, February 9th. Seaman apprentice David Thompson had filed a formal complaint with his chain of command, describing 3 weeks of escalating phenomena that had left him unable to sleep. Week 1. Drums at night. All 3 roommates heard them, always between 0200 and 0400, always the same deep rhythmic beating. At first they thought it was coming from another building, maybe some sailor playing music, but the drums would stop the instant they turned on the lights. Flip the switch. immediate silence. Lights off, the drums would resume within minutes. Week 2. Objects moving. The 3 sailors would arrange their boots at the foot of their racks before lights out. Standard practice. Every morning, they'd wake to find all 6 boots arranged in formation on the floor, positioned as if invisible feet still occupied them, spaced exactly as military drill required. Once, Thompson woke in the middle of the night and caught the boots moving, sliding across the floor by themselves. No wires, no tricks, just boots gliding into formation while he watched. Week 3, the night of February 7th. All 3 men woke, simultaneously at 300 to find every locker in the room standing open. Their uniforms had been removed and laid out on the floor in perfect inspection arrangement, each item positioned exactly according to regulations, rank insignia placed precisely, creases aligned. The door was still locked from the inside. No one had heard anything. Thompson documented everything, took photos, wrote detailed descriptions. His chain of command read the complaint, consulted with each other, then denied his transfer request, pending investigation. No investigation was ever conducted. Thompson was moved to a different barracks the day after Webb's incident. Elena Ruiz was the first, January the 28th, 2 weeks before the others. She'd had duty that evening and stayed in Building 178 alone while her roommates enjoyed liberty in Honolulu. Around midnight, she was reading in her rack when she heard singing. Hawaiian singing, multiple male voices harmonizing in a language she didn't understand. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Beautiful but mournful. The kind of singing you'd hear at a funeral. The lights started flickering. Ruiz's first instinct was electrical problems. But the flickering followed a pattern, almost rhythmic. She got up and went to the window, looking out toward the Ko'olau Mountains. What she saw made her freeze. A line of torches moving down from the ridgeline. Not on any road or trail, just cutting straight down through terrain now covered by parking lots and buildings, following some invisible path that only the torchbearers could see. 40, maybe 50 lights, arranged in 2 perfect columns. They passed directly through where Building 178 stands. Ruiz told Yoshida. I watched them approach. I couldn't move. The temperature in my room dropped so fast I could see ice forming on the inside of the window. Then I felt them pass through the building, through the walls, through my room, through me. Ruiz said she heard voices speaking Hawaiian as they passed, smelled smoke and flowers, specifically tai leaves, though she didn't know what they were called at the time. Felt a pressure in the air like being underwater. The sensation lasted maybe 5 minutes. Then the torches continued down toward the harbor and disappeared. She didn't report it, didn't tell anyone. She was from Los Angeles, had no background in Hawaiian culture, and figured she'd hallucinated from stress or exhaustion. But she called her aunt in Hilo, her mother's sister who'd grown up in Hawaii, described what she'd seen without mentioning where or when. Her aunt's response was immediate and urgent. You saw the Huaka'i Pō, the Night Marchers. Listen carefully. If you ever see them again, lie face down immediately. Don't move. Don't speak. Don't acknowledge them. If they notice you, they might take you with them. Your only protection is to stay completely still and hope they pass by. Ruiz asked what they were. Her aunt explained, spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors, chiefs, and their attendants marching eternally between sacred sites. They follow the old paths, the routes they walked when alive. Those paths existed long before any modern buildings, and the marchers don't recognize what's been built over them. To them, the land is as it was centuries ago. My aunt said I was lucky I didn't call out or try to interact, Ruiz told Yoshida. She said acknowledging them is the worst thing you can do. They're not evil, but they're not of our world anymore. Getting their attention is dangerous. Yoshida's report notes that she verified the sailors' accounts independently. They hadn't discussed their experiences with each other before reporting them. The timeline showed a clear escalation. First Ruiz's sighting, then 3 weeks of increasing phenomena culminating in Thompson's complaint, then Webb's terror-induced flight from the building. More significantly, Yoshida discovered something that Command had failed to investigate: Building 178's location. Built in 1943, it sat at the edge of what Hawaiian cultural records identified as a traditional pathway. Ancient stone trail markers had been found during the building's construction and discarded as obstacles. A 1987 memo from Base Cultural Liaison, Dr. Haunani Kealoha, which Yoshida unearthed from archived files, specifically warned that Building 178's foundation had been laid across a route connecting upland heiau temples to the harbor. Dr. Kealoha had recommended consulting with Hawaiian cultural practitioners before housing personnel there. The memo was filed and ignored. Building 178 was condemned in April 2003. During demolition, workers found what the original construction crews had discarded 60 years earlier: a section of ancient stone pathway buried beneath the foundation. Traditional Hawaiian stonework, basalt blocks cut and fitted without mortar, part of a network that once connected sacred sites across the island. The stones were documented, photographed, then broken apart and used as fill material. No Hawaiian cultural practitioners were consulted. The land where Building 178 stood remains vacant. According to base records, there are plans to build a new facility there. According to base personnel who spoke off the record, nobody wants that assignment. Were the experiences of Ruiz, Thompson, and Webb mass hysteria? Elaborate pranks? Or did 3 sailors independently encounter something that Hawaiian culture has recognized for over a millennium? The spirits of warriors marching paths that existed long before Pearl Harbor, long before the United States Navy, long before any Western concept of the Pacific. And if it was merely coincidence and stress, why did the phenomena follow the same pattern Hawaiian tradition describes? The specific hours, the drums and chanting, the torchlit formations, the electromagnetic interference, the bone-deep cold, the feeling of something ancient passing through. 2 accounts, 2 different eras, different witnesses, different locations, different circumstances. Yet the testimonies align in ways that resist easy dismissal. The drums, the torches, the military precision of the formations, the equipment failures, the overwhelming sense of encountering something that predates modern understanding. Hawaiian cultural practitioners are not surprised by these accounts. For them, the Night Marchers are not folklore in the way Westerners understand the term. They're documented reality, as observable and predictable as ocean tides. The Huaka'i Pō follow specific routes, appear at specific times, obey specific rules. They are not malevolent entities seeking to harm the living. They're warriors and chiefs continuing their eternal duties, honoring obligations that transcend death. From this perspective, Robert Chen and the sailors of Building 178 weren't experiencing hallucinations. They were trespassers on sacred ground, encountering something their culture hadn't prepared them to recognize. The U.S. military built its Hawaiian installations over burial sites, across ancient pathways, on land where ceremonies had been performed for centuries. It did so without consulting the people who understood that land's spiritual significance. And when personnel began reporting encounters with the island's original inhabitants, Command chose denial over investigation. The question haunts these stories. Can we believe them? Skeptics point to stress, isolation, cultural conditioning, the power of suggestion. They note that most sightings occur at night, in remote locations, among personnel who've heard the legends. They argue, reasonably, that the human brain excels at finding patterns, that mysterious sounds and lights can often be explained by conventional means, that eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. But total dismissal requires us to believe that trained military observers, People selected and trained specifically for their ability to remain calm and report accurately under pressure are systematically unreliable when they describe phenomena that challenge materialist assumptions. It requires explaining away the electromagnetic failures, the corroborating witnesses, the alignment between modern accounts and ancient tradition. It requires ignoring the testimony of indigenous experts who've understood these phenomena for generations. Perhaps the truth exists in territory our Western framework struggles to map. Perhaps the Night Marchers are neither hallucination nor literal ghosts, but something else. Collective memory given form, sacred land remembering its past, the weight of history manifesting in ways that defy simple categorization. The Hawaiian concept of mana, spiritual power inherent in land, objects and people, doesn't translate cleanly into English. Neither does kapu or aumakua, or the understanding that past and present exist simultaneously in places where great events occurred. What's certain is this. For over 80 years, American service members have encountered something in Hawaii. Whether that something is supernatural or explicable through science we don't yet understand, it's real enough to frighten trained personnel, compel official reports, and vanish into classified files where uncomfortable questions go to die. The land remembers. The paths remain, visible or not. And those who walked them in life continue to walk them in death, indifferent to the modern world that's built over their sacred ground. We can dismiss this as superstition. We can explain it away. But the accounts continue. The patterns persist. And every few years, another sailor stands watch alone on a moonless night and learns that some things are older than empires, stronger than steel, and utterly unconcerned with our disbelief. The next time you're stationed in Hawaii, walking those beautiful islands where mountain meets ocean, remember what the kupuna teach. Some paths belong to the past, and the past in these islands never truly ends. It marches on, eternal and unyielding, waiting for the living to step aside or be swept along with the dead. If these accounts from the fog of war intrigue you, if you want to hear more true stories where the unexplained intersects with military service, consider subscribing to this channel. There are more testimonies waiting in the archives, more voices that deserve to be heard. Until next time, stay alert. Some things we're trained to face. Others we're only trained to survive. These stories are presented as submitted accounts and documented legends based on witness testimony, historical records, and cultural traditions. The accounts of Night Marcher encounters represent the sincere experiences of military personnel as they reported them. Interpretations of these events may vary. All information regarding Hawaiian culture and spiritual traditions has been researched respectfully and is presented to honor indigenous knowledge and beliefs. We acknowledge that these events occurred on lands sacred to native Hawaiian people, and we intend no disrespect to Hawaiian culture, spiritual practices, or the ancestors whose stories these are.